Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, Ph.D. And this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women leaders. And we talk about leadership purpose and its importance for you. I am a college professor, and when I am not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women leaders how to find, and not only find, but how to stay in alignment with their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference right there in their career, leadership, or business. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Robin with another solo episode for you. And as I've done in the past, I periodically do a solo episode to encourage you in your pursuit of leadership purpose. And for today, I want to encourage you to think about and to connect with what really matters to you, what really matters to you. And I will share an experience from my own life to encourage you in your own life and work. This is what you've done for me. Those were the words of a woman who I worked with years ago, about 30 years ago now, believe it or not, 30 years ago, which reminds me, I've been doing this work empowering women in one form or another for many years. But in any case, this was 30 years ago. And it's like most defining moments. You might have some moments in your life that were pivotal moments and you still remember them like they were yesterday. That's the case with this moment for me. I remember it like it was yesterday. And she told me that I had really made a difference in her life because I helped her with her self-perception, the way she saw herself. And when she said those words, "This is what you've done for me," she showed me an illustration. It was a clipping from a newspaper. Remember when newspapers were a thing? So anyway, she cut out the image from the newspaper, what we would call like the cartoon section, but it wasn't really a cartoon. It was a serious commentary. And this was during the time when Nelson Mandela was recently released from prison. So in the clipping, the artist illustration had two panels on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. So on the left-hand side, there was an image of Nelson Mandela going into prison. So this was before the 27 years he spent in prison. They showed him thin, kind of with his head down a bit, almost emaciated. And then on the right-hand side of the image, the panel illustrated Nelson Mandela 27 years later, leaving the prison, very muscular and built with his body looking like a bodybuilder. And she handed that to me and she had cut out from the newspaper and said, "This is what you've done for me." And needless to say, I was really moved by that moment. And she went on to explain how she was feeling about herself before we did our work together and her understanding of herself after our work together. At that time, I was working for a company who helped women get back into the workforce. They were mothers who stayed home and were away from the workforce for a period of time. And then this program was to help them transition back into the workforce. And part of my role was to help them with preparing for the interview. But the preparation also included confidence building. Because sometimes when you're away from work or from whatever the thing that you had been doing, or maybe you didn't have any experience with it, sometimes you can lose your confidence. And they knew in their wisdom that in order to get the employment that they were seeking, they had to go beyond just interview skills. It had to do with their own understanding of themselves and how they express that. So it was part of my job to help them with that. And in this case, she came back to tell me about it because it just happened to be during my last few days on the job there. So she was saying goodbye to me and offering, her reflection on our work together in this way because I was leaving the job. Now, it's maybe surprising to hear that I was leaving this job because I absolutely loved this work. Loved it. It suited me. I used my natural abilities, my passions, my own values in many ways, and I just loved the job. However, the company, for maybe close to a year before the time I resigned, there was this always this looming threat that they might not make it financially. It was a small private company and they were trying to do good in the world, but they always had this threat of financial doom and collapse. And so it got to the point where I could not have peace of mind knowing that at some point, at any point, we didn't know that they just wouldn't be there anymore. And so I lost my sense of peace of mind regarding stability, job stability, which of course loans itself to financial stability to a certain extent. And peace of mind is one of my core values. And so that's what I want to encourage us to think about today, your core values. Now, what does it mean, core value? A core value is something that really matters to you and forms the foundation on which you build your life, your work, your leadership, your way of being. And by the way, your core values are in operation all the time, whether we are conscious of them or not. They're always in operation. And it's important to identify them and to know them so you could be guided by them in a conscious way. Top brain performance coach and author of the best-selling book Limitless, Jim Kwik. And by the way, Jim Kwik worked with teams like Google, Nike, SpaceX, Virgin, Facebook, Zappos. I mean, he's done a lot. And he works with high performing men and women in business, entrepreneurs, leaders. And his work focuses on the brain. But within his work, he gives some insights about how to counter the effects of burnout, overload, mental fatigue, stress, overwhelm, and those kinds of things. And one thing he says in his book, Limitless, he says, often we're not any of those things, burnt out, stressed, overwhelmed. We're not having those experiences because we're doing too much, like we would think. We think, oh, it's just because I'm doing too much. He says, no, it's not because we're doing too much. It's because we're doing too little of the things that we really value, of those things that really matter to us. And so we're not really expressing enough of our values in our daily life and in our daily work. And so that's one of the reasons why knowing your core values is important. And I would add to that to say it's also important because it gives you clarity. You know what you want to do and how to do it because you're guided by your values. So it gives you direction and it keeps you going when times are tough and in challenging times, when you have this sense of fulfillment and meaning because you're expressing your values. And also it is one of the key elements of knowing your leadership purpose, knowing your values. So for all those reasons, knowing your core values, very important. So you say, well, okay, that makes sense. But then how do we identify our core values? Well, it takes some reflection. It takes some reflection on your life and your experiences to think about what those things are. But let me just give you one to get you started here. Let me give you just one way to kind of approach this. And your core values could be monetary, non-monetary, material, non-material. So here's a way to just start thinking about it in addition to just sitting down and trying to rattle off a list, which you could do. But think about this time. Now here, I'm asking you to engage your imagination and you'll go back and use this as a little reflection exercise and write this down. But here's the overview for now. Use your imagination and imagine yourself in a time that there's no pandemic. Everything is completely taken care of in every aspect of your life. Job, leadership, home, school, children, family, friends, society, all is well. And now you have this 5-hour magical free period to do whatever you want. Whatever you want. Everything is taken care of. Nobody needs you. You don't have to be anywhere to do anything. You're in optimal health and well-being. What do you do in this 5 hours? Take some time and think about that and just write out what comes to your mind. Just let your imagination flow and write it out. And once you have that written out, just keep writing until you're done. Then go back and look at it and look at the themes that emerge. Look at the types of activities you're doing to think about what they reflect about what's important to you. So that's a way to get started to find your core values. All right. So I'll leave you with that for now. But of course, if you want some more help with identifying your core values, I'm happy to help you think through that. Feel free to contact me on my website, robinlowens.com, or you can find me in my favorite social media spot right now, which is LinkedIn and Clubhouse. So Robin L. Owens, Ph.D. on either of those, LinkedIn or Clubhouse. And then my website is robinlowens.com. All right. So consider what really matters to you. Until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Robin signing off. See you next time.